double check that really quick.
Thank you. I'm getting the live stream started, so please give me a moment. Great. All right, that's fired up. All right, great. Welcome to another episode of the OpenJS Foundation's Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is the 26th of May, and we're working through some meeting hiccups here, but you can follow along on the YouTube stream or get into the Zoom from the calendar link, and we are working out our list of agenda items. We'll go through the Cross-Project Council's agenda items first when we get to agenda items, and then see whatever else we may have across the org. But to get things started, do we have any announcements?
As usual, I'm going to put out my reminder call to the community for sessions for Collab Summit. That is like, oh my gosh, it's under a month away. Holy mackerel. Ooh. That's so exciting. I think we're going to have a wonderful conference and a wonderful set of days for discussing all kinds of things across all of our projects, but obviously it's made better by all of you and your ideas and your thoughts and stuff. So please head on over to the Summit repo, submit your sessions, and let me know ASAP so I can start to build this the agenda. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just add too that the Monday of the Collab Summit is like oriented towards new contributors, and then we also have a focus on stuff that we can collaborate on that is cross-project, things that might help other projects that could be valuable. So keep that stuff in mind. Awesome. Anything else? Anything from the board? Was that on Friday that the meeting happened?
It was, and I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything really to bring back to discuss. There was more discussion about the crowdfunding guidelines, and there's some progress on that, but there still needs to be. So we saw something more concrete, but it still needs to go through in a couple more steps before it's shared. Continuing to kind of push on that to get something out as soon as we can.
Thank you. Great. And then also, I think perhaps the board approved the stuff around regular membership updates. I think you merged the PR and everything, so we're all good on that.
Yeah, the ones that we've had up for the last little while, I've merged them as they're approved. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else before we get into the agenda?
There was a public board session on Friday as well. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can check it out.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I joined that. It was fun.
Cool. All right, cool. So let's get into the agenda items. And if folks can help me remember, there were, I think, two things in the issues that we wanted to touch on as well, if we have time. The project charter review of AMP. Well, I guess that's in our agenda because it wasn't created by. Oh no, that was 7 days ago. So that's good.
I did post an issue. Like the issue is now there if we want to use those issues.
Okay. Let me look in here.
Just in case there's anything that was missing or something like that.
Yeah, great. All right, cool. I will drop that into the chat here for folks. And then the other, let's see. So one thing that is not on here, because I don't think it has the agenda item, but Sarah asked if we could just take a look at it, is the, where is it? Individual membership, what are the goals, issue 553. So if we have time, we'll get to that as well. Cool. All right. So jumping into the agenda items from this new issue, and let me see if I can. I'm going to actually pull. Oh, there's that. So I will drop this in here, anyone wants to kind of format that, that would be great. The list of agenda items is now in the HackMD. So the first item on the list here is project charter review for AMP. This is issue 552. Toby created it about a week ago. Do you want to give us any sort of an update or anything, Toby? Context?
Well, we're getting close to being ready to complete onboarding, and as such, one of the things that needs to happen is for the CPC to check our charter and approve it. And so that's sort of like that's the purpose of that step, really. There's a few items that are still, that still need to be completed and cleared. But we're hopeful that we're going to get there on time to finish the onboarding during OpenJS World. And so, yeah, so that's really where we're at.
Great. But the charter, you say there's a few things left to do, but the charter's ready to go to review? Excellent.
Absolutely. So one of the quick things that I can say about it is we had AMP had a fairly complete governance .md document before that, and already some design guides and like a number of things that's supposed to be in the charter. And so we decided to essentially point to those from the charter. So the charter is it does a lot of pointing, and
Okay.
it's quite, as a result, like quite small.
Okay. And is that, is there any issues with pointing to it rather than having it in the charter? I only ask from a governance standpoint. I don't really know.
So we being Brian and I didn't see any issues with that in terms of rereading our documentation, and so we advised this approach based on simplicity and deduplication.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. Sorry, Michael, maybe you're going to say this too. Does it when you change things, is it considered like charter changes, or how does that work? And sorry to interrupt, Michael, if you had anything.
But that's exactly where I was going. Is the only complication I could see is if the charter changes substantially, then it needs a CPC review, and I don't know. I guess if the things it refers to aren't things that are being sort of captured in the charter itself, but support the charter, then I don't see any issue. If they're like, here's our whole governance thing is over here, then maybe they would have to be subject to review in the charter. Like if it basically says, here's our organizational structure, and that gets changed to say we're going to become a BDFL, that's obviously a scope that would need the CPC review for, right? Versus other things which maybe just supporting and clearly wouldn't be, right?
Yeah,
so
and maybe this is something we can just look at what's there,
yep.
see what's linked, and see if anything. It just was what came to mind. Obviously, you as well, Michael.
Yep, same with me.
Cool. All right. Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to just recap and restate, because we haven't done too many of these, that, the process is we either get more than 50% of the voting CPC members to +1 the charter, or if there's, after 14 days, if there's been no comment or further discussion, it is automatically approved, correct?
I think it needs to wait 14 days.
Regardless?
Unless, yeah, I mean, I think there is some words that say if we're in a meeting and you have quorum, you don't have to wait, but otherwise the idea is that half the people don't just say, yep, we're good, and then the other half have no chance to look at it. So generally it's written to be people have enough time, and for things that are more important, there's slightly longer time versus other things. So I'm pretty sure unless you have quorum in a meeting, that's the one override that's in the governance. It would be like wait 14 days and then it can land.
So we're not in a hurry, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah, if someone wants to just kind of research that real quickly and drop that into the issue, I try to do that when I can, just so it's clear as to what is the requirement for that to be considered done. That'd be awesome. Cool. Otherwise, and what's our process for approving it? Should just, a +1 and a comment, or should we thumb, the description? Is there any clarity on that as well?
I think the +1s, I mean, we've done either, but the thumbs up, I think after a certain number, you can't see who the people were. So I think
Okay.
the safest is a +1 comment, because then you can actually always see who's said yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, cool. Well, I encourage everyone to go take a look at that, and we can move that along. Thanks, Toby.
Awesome. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone involved. Cool. Next on the agenda is issue 549. This is one I created, realizing that there wasn't really like a chair election schedule for the Cross Project Council, and I can just ignore that and just keep doing this forever, but that wouldn't be fair. So my thinking is maybe we, maybe I this week can write something up about what goes into being the chair, and then starting next week we can take nominations, and then a week later we can run a vote. It was just kind of off the top of my head. Seems reasonable.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Write something up. A week, enough nominations. Sorry, just taking a quick note so I know to finish this up after the meeting. And then a week later, run election. Okay, cool. Excellent. So moving on, the next agenda item is move the collaboration network proposal to stage 1, issue 548. Michael, you open this up. We've got a bunch of approvals, but do you want to just kind of update folks?
Yeah, nothing really new beyond that. Just waiting for getting enough +1s. I think I proposed that unless there are any objections by the meeting today, we would consider it approved, and I would move it to the next stage. Did I actually put that in there? I didn't, but I'd like that propose that now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people who've +1s, no objections. So I'd propose we consider that approved. I don't think there's anything in terms of the staging process, how long things have to stay open. Let me take a quick look.
Yeah, this is almost 14 days, so should be good there.
Okay.
So this is just for changing the stage from 0 to 1, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and as far as the staging process is concerned as well, going to 1 basically just means that we're open to exploring and working on this. So I don't think there's really need for anything more explicit than what we've got at the moment.
Yeah,
okay.
I agree.
So I'll go ahead and land it, and then I'll open the proposal to the PR to move it to stage 2.
Perfect. No objections? Great. Cool. Thank you, Michael. Brian, the next item on the agenda here is 543. This is should outgoing voting members become regular members automatically. We had a little bit of conversation here, but I'm be happy to open the floor up to see if anybody has any thoughts. I was suggesting that they should not be automatically moved to regular members, and that should be an explicit decision. But I'm open to what people think.
Do we have any feedback on what people would prefer? Like, I'm happy if they went directly to regular members, but if we think that people won't want that, it's basically, do they go directly to regular members and have to then say, oh no, I don't want to? Or do they go to non-members and then have to say, hey, I want to be a member?
Well, what's the downside of each approach, right? Like to me, the downside of having them automatically be regular members is that maybe we have people listed as members that are like, oh, actually, I don't want to be a member, and then we can take them off. But there's but it doesn't seem to me there's any harm. Like, it's not like having people on that list costs us money or something. But then the
No,
flip
and-
side, if
yeah.
you take them off the list by default, the harm there is that they then feel excluded and kicked out. And then they have to say, oh no, please include me. And that
Right.
is a much bigger barrier for people to overcome. So for me, it feels a more inclusive approach to keep them as regular members and less, you know, even if we proactively ask them if they want to stay that way, it's fine to ping them and be like, we're making you a regular member. Let us know if that's not cool. But like, to me, that feels like a more inclusive by default approach than the alternative.
Yeah, and as voting members, I'm hoping that most of the time they've been more than active enough to be a regular member. So I'm of the same, you know, that's why I was asking if there's any, like if people were saying, no, I don't want to go, I don't want that to automatically happen, I might change my opinion, but my default one would be, yeah, let's just move them to regular members and people can ask to drop out if and when they think that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll just say, because I said it in the issue, that I originally argued against it, partially from the standpoint of having some voting members who weren't particularly active, and thinking that a pull request to just add yourself to the list isn't a huge hurdle. That being said, I agree with Jordan. I think inclusive by default is a better approach, and I think, you know, I'm in favor of that.
And for what it's worth, I think in parallel, we may want to then proactively address the issue of like, what's the word I'm looking for? People piling up on the list that aren't active anymore, by like, in the same way as like Node recertifies members of its moderation team and other things like every year, and like sort of just doesn't even have to be a requirement, but just sort of a periodic process where we ping people and are like, just making sure you're still active. You know?
Yeah, I could even see, and not to bike shed this too much, but I could see some sort of tool that would check issues and comments and the meeting notes. And if you don't see somebody for 3 months or however long, you know, it at least alerts someone or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I mean, and even simpler might be a GitHub action, which once every 3 months opens an issue that says, hey, regular members, if you think you're still active, comment here. And then, you know, people who comment here and say, yeah, I'm still active, if they don't even know, if somebody doesn't even notice that, that's a pretty good indicator that they're not, right?
And we may even be able to parse attendees out of meeting notes and just not bother asking those people, because if you've been to a meeting in the last 3 months, you're probably fine.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, Node or ComCom, Adam Miller, when he was in ComCom, built that. If you want that, I can point you to that.
I'm just thinking simplest of all, right? Like a GitHub action that just created the issue, probably, I'm guessing, is not much code at all.
Well, all right. Well, let's
Yeah.
we can think about that as well. So, Brian, I unless there are objections, I think the answer is to automatically move them to regular members. Any objections? Great. Cool. Thank you, Brian.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. I'll update the directory.
Excellent. Cool. Where
Is
are
there
we now?
someplace where we ought to document this as well?
Um,
I'll take the action to without derailing meeting. I'll take the action to look through and open a PR any place where it seems like it should be documented. We can comment on that.
yeah,
I
that'd be
think
great.
Governance or somewhere would be good. Like if we have a voting member offboarding section, would probably be good.
Like that.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see. Michael, I see another issue here with the label agenda for OpenJS Collaboration Network.
Yeah, I think that's the original issue, so I just said it's covered by 548 above.
Okay, cool. Next up is the second director seat post July 2020. We talked about this last week. Does anybody want to give their context and any sort of update on this? I think maybe Michael, were you going to write something up on being a board director, and then we were going to move forward from there?
I think Brian was looking for something that we might have already had.
Yeah, I was, and last week was a little brutal, and I didn't get a chance to get to it. So I have to have that on the list for this week.
Okay.
So I mean, if we can dig up that, then I'm happy to take a look at it and add anything that I think is missing or worth commenting on.
That'd be great. I know, let's see, Chris is on the call too. So if you want to add any thoughts to any sort of a document like that, that could be helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right, so we'll punt on this and we'll look at it next week. Toby and Brian.
Yeah, this
the
is
next...
still same story. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No worries. So we're talking about pull request 414, add foundation-wide copyright guidance.
Since we're on that, maybe I'll ask. Maybe I won't ask a question. I'll follow up with you later, Brian. There's just a question in one of the repos that, but
okay,
follow up later.
Cool. Issue 326 is next on the list. Responsible security disclosures. I see you have a comment here, Michael.
Yeah, I did follow up with Marseille. I don't think no progress so far. I kind of offered to see if there was anything I could do to help out. I think he was going to try and get something. But yeah, no, that's the update I have.
Okay. Cool. Hey, look at that. That's the end of the agenda as it was created from the meeting tool. I'm trying to just get back to the list of issues. So yeah, the other thing that Sarah pinged in the Slack channel is to encourage folks to take a look at issue 553. I'll drop this into the chat. This is individual membership. What are the goals? And in her description here, it says this is a continuation of issue 551. Please share your answer to the following questions in order to ensure a shared understanding of the membership program. Question number 1, what do you see as the top 3 goals of the program? Number 2, what are 3 non-goals this program should avoid? And number 3, who should I contact specifically, if anyone, to ensure all the needs that this program is addressing are accounted for? Dave Methvin has a couple of responses here, and I encourage other folks to dig into that as well. Anyone want to add to that?
I'm wondering, like, do we have other things for the agenda? I have one other thing, if we have time, would be worth talking about, but I'm wondering, are there other things too?
There was nothing else on any, like the summit, the standards, or the code of conduct repo that were tagged with the CPC agenda. So, you know, we would be free to move to more ad hoc, bearing in mind that we do want to break for a few minutes for private session.
Okay, so I was just wondering, like, would it make any sense to spend 10 minutes on this one? What are the 3 top things, or do we just want to leave that to GitHub? Just since it seems like we have a bit of time, and then the other one, if I could get 10 minutes for the other issue, that would be good too.
Well, if you want, I guess 10 minutes, that would give us 20 minutes in private. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like the questions that Sarah raises, we could discuss them, but also it might be beneficial for folks to kind of take them away for a week, and we can come back to that. I don't know. I'm open to whatever though.
Yeah, if that makes sense, I thought I'd just throw it out there. So just sorry, Jory, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I was just going to say I would prefer to spend some time and develop like my own personal response to this before brainstorming on it as a group.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Can I ask, and we can punt on this as well, but since we've done some code of conduct process working sessions, is there any progress on that, or anything that we should be focused, we could discuss now, or just encourage folks to take a look at in their free time?
So my topic is a little related to that.
Okay.
Or directly.
All right, well, I'll ask Jory if you have any updates that you know of, and then maybe we can talk about what, Michael, you have. Anything, Jory?
So I'm just looking at the open pull request. Other than just the summary from our last discussion, which was last week, there have been no further comments on the PR on the Code of Conduct repo. This is the one that describes more specifically how we want to direct projects to refer to the Code of Conduct. So I would love to be able to merge this and move on. My like personal interest here is in making sure that the documentation with expectations, not just for the Code of Conduct, but for all of the steps a project has to take in the onboarding process are well documented. So it would be great to put this one down and pick up another one.
For the record, I reached out to our friend over at GitHub about the idea of having a code of conduct in your .github repository in an org that also auto-magically creates a meta file in the repo as well. So that's at least on someone's list over at GitHub.
Is there a specific need for it to be bundled in the repo itself? Is that like the hard requirement there?
No, I think just out of our discussion, having it in the .github repo is great from an organization's perspective, but from like a consumer's perspective, most people I think would look for a code of conduct file in the repository. And then also when you fork a repo, that COC doesn't kind of come along with that necessarily. Those were the concerns.
I guess the reason I brought that up is because it does end up surfacing it directly in multiple places in the GitHub UI, which is why I was curious if that was different. But yeah, it does seem, yeah, I understand.
So one idea that we had out of that conversation last week was having like a meta COC file. Meta is maybe the wrong word, but just have like basically a COC file that says points to the correct COC in the .github repository. So at least it's there and surfaceable.
That makes sense.
So I think the PR in question is quiet on that. I mean, it does say it needs to be discoverable from every repo, right? But I'm thinking it could land in the current form, regardless of that other, you know, maybe it prevents people from just putting in the .github file for now, but
I think what I want to like really make sure that we're getting to here is like, if there are going to be requirements, you know, for how something is surfaced, that's in here. And so we've got all kinds of different ideas and thoughts about, you know, lots of different ways this could be consumed. But at the end of the day, you know, I think we should figure out what it is that we actually require, and then the rest of it genuinely is left up to the project.
I mean, you have the line, which is you may place your COC file in an admin or meta repository, but it must be discoverable from any project repo.
I think that's pretty basic, which I inflexible, but I get the sense that there's some desire to make it even more specific.
And I guess I can kind of speak to what Jory is saying from like my working on trying to get Electron through. One of the things I found is like, I end up having to reach out and ask questions of like, well, what do you mean when things are not well defined? And like having multiple options is totally cool. Like having just a link in each README or having, you know, a distinct code of conduct file that points back, but like having options really helps reduce the friction, at least it would have for me, in getting some of those things tacked down faster. So that's I guess.
So there are two options there right now, and I think that file is potentially a good place for people to PR in additional options that.
Yeah. I think that sentence maybe could just be added to say like using one of the following methods so that it's clear, because if you just put out two options and it's not clear that we would like one of these two options to be done, then then it's really left up, kind of to Tierney's point, a little more left open.
I mean, I guess it depends whether you want to make it, these are the only two options, or these are two examples of options.
That's the question, I guess. And I think what Tierney's saying is it would be better if it were clearer and not ambiguous.
It would have reduced the friction. I don't want to say necessarily better, but it would have reduced the friction for me to get the work done and like have less back and forth with foundation folks on it. And not just foundation folks, but like people in the CPC and the foundation and all that. Like I would have had to do less work there. If that makes sense.
Yep.
It just that's just a broad thing for everything. And this is one example.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, are we saying that they need to use one of these options? And if there are other options, they need to be PR'd in? Or are we just saying, here are a couple of ways you could do that, but as long as it's discoverable from any project repo, you're good to go? That's a question. Anyone have any thoughts?
I prefer the second one where these are examples, but I'm open to, like, I'm also okay with it being like, these are the two, and if you want something different, PR it in.
Yeah, I think based on Tierney's comment, that we should just make that line more explicit in one direction or the other, and then merge this puppy.
Are there any objections to making it, these are two possible examples?
No objections. I just would want to be clear that if a project says, oh, okay, well, we're going to go with option 3, which isn't listed here, it's this other way of doing it, that the code of conduct team is responsible for ensuring that meets the CPC requirements and so on. I don't want to see that end up being like another very long.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, Jory.
Yeah, no, I think you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
Maybe
I was just going to say,
sure, go ahead.
I think that we should say that it should be one of these two options. And if you have a different preferred option, then to just, we're open to any other option that is discoverable, but, we would like to document that here.
Yeah, I guess like maybe it's just if it says it needs to be one of these options, if you'd like to do something else, please PR it into the document.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be like inflexible, but I think, like what Jory and Tierney are saying, it would be good if there was guidance and or not guidance, but requirements and options. But if it's something else, then just let us know so we're not like tracking things down and creating more.
I think I would feel that in general, we should say like, here are the defaults we prefer, but then have a general statement somewhere that says if you need to deviate from the suggestion, then PR it. That way we're not like identifying that, saying that over and over again throughout the document, because that would be tedious, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It also makes it a lot harder for us as staff to like say, yes, we've checked this box with this project, so we can proceed to the next thing for something, like onboarding. And this is, really important to us. Obviously, we want to make progress and be able to communicate very clearly to projects that, that we've met that.
I think we want to be flexible but unambiguous.
Yeah, I coming around to, it's probably better to say, like, however we say it, that if you want to do something different, it needs to be PR'd in, and the review process of that PR is effectively how we agree that that's another viable option.
Yeah. In an effort to not spend too much time on this, Jory, do you think that that's something that you can just kind of tweak that language a little bit there, and then we can move forward on that?
Sure. Yeah, I can tweak that, and we'll, if assuming no one, we'll just merge it in.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Me too.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to help, I volunteered you, Jory, because it's your PR, but if anyone wants to help, please do so. Michael, you had something that was related that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, well, Tierney was just asking about some of the requirements of escalation. And I thought it would be worth spending a little bit of time. I don't think we'll cover it in 10 minutes, but I mean, fundamentally, I think we need to decide as a CPC if there is going to be an escalation process or not. Currently, it's written up that there is. It seems that there's some concerns, confusion, whatever. And, so maybe not general agreement that we actually want to have that be the case. And, so I think a little bit of discussion, and then, we can take it back to the GitHub tracker. My take is that, it's going to be very hard to be somewhere in between. I think it's either, the CPC/foundation has some responsibility, some stake, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, in terms of making sure that a COC is enforced across the projects, or it doesn't, right? And if it does, you need an escalation process because, for example, we've said you need to have a COC, but a project could say, well, sure, here we have one, immediately reject or ignore all reports. And, I think it's better for us to think about this beforehand. If that happened, would we just say, okay, fine, it's up to the project? Or would the CPC/foundation need to, if somebody complained to us about that, would we actually do anything? Or just say, sorry, no, the COC enforcement's up to the project, go talk to the project?
Yeah, I think this is a good question and something that we should spend some time on. Is there an issue that's specific to this? And if not, we should make one and add the label.
Yeah, go ahead. I think Tierney may know it exactly off the top of his head.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's in the code of conduct, code of conduct repo. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that, maybe next week we should get back to code of conduct processes and first check that onboarding is not blocked by COC processes. I mean, obviously this, what we're talking about is important to that, but I don't know if it's blocking.
I think from Tierney, you think it may be?
I think I agree.
Yeah, I think it is, because basically you're telling projects implement this thing that could potentially invalidate your code of conduct and your decisions, which to me, both from any project I participate in, that's super concerning of cool, no, the foundation just says you have to let this person back into your project, despite them having your processes having violated the COC. That's a concerning potential to me. And then there's a lot of other kind of details here that there's too many unknowns that it feels relatively blocking to me.
Yeah, I can understand that concern. The similar concern would be if there was a member project that was allowing flagrant violations. Are the other projects going to be concerned about that? Or is it no, that's fine, they're just another project? And in my mind, you can't really, you can't have it both ways. You either have to say, yes, we're concerned about this, and so we can complain and have an escalation, or you say, well, no, that's, what other projects do, they could do whatever they want, has nothing to do with our, the other projects' concerns.
Well, something else that's sort of related is that, let's say there's a repeat offender that gets banned from one foundation project and then hops to another one, and then another one, and then another one. At some point, it is our failure. And that point, I would argue, is when it's happened to a third project at the soonest, or, but not the fourth. It's too late by then. But it's, there's a balance we have to strike between project autonomy and not letting assholes scamper around under our umbrella.
I think with that being said, though, projects have explicitly expressed that they do not want to be told by the foundation who can and can't participate. So I think that it's potentially reasonable to have something around information sharing and sharing that information with projects. But I think that anything that says, the foundation will tell you who and who can't be a contributor starts to get into a weird space that I know makes some projects uncomfortable. I also would like to this becomes a hard place because we don't want to screw up. But I really feel like we're at risk of kind of like overly formalizing things, and like to the point where our debating back and forth about how to do this has happened for so long that we do not have like the basic infrastructure in place that we need to support issues from coming up. So I do want to encourage folks to perhaps, like, I understand the need to work through all these edge cases and not wanting to get caught without having it planned for. But we are at risk of kind of over planning and having nothing right now.
And to me, just that is kind of what it feels like we're at, of like, there's this thing, but it's not necessarily fully defined. And like, even this conversation has had like gone through 3 different levels of like what this should cover that are completely distinct cases. Of like, one is, you know, the entire foundation, one is what happens when a project isn't doing things well, and another is like what happens when this has to be dealt with, like someone comes and reports and like a project we're not doing well.
But I think we're
This feels like it's too big, and we're not handling it in like the modular bits we need to.
Like, you know, that's, I agree that some of these other things like the cross, you know, a collaborator across projects, and I unfortunately those I think just confuse the issue, in that today there's nothing that says we should be doing that. What's there, at least in my mind, was the the smallest step you could take, other than making it purely like projects can do whatever they want. And maybe, you know, the foundation can provide guidance, information, whatever. But what's the smallest step you could take if you're going to go beyond that? And I think that's what's there now. And in my mind, if we can't even agree to that, we should probably just agree projects can do whatever they want. We don't have any requirements at this point. But
Yeah, I think we should wrap up this conversation. I want to let Dylan comment though before we do.
I was just going to say, I think the biggest thing that in general is missing from code of conduct processes is for how, like, to making sure you define a process for someone to basically serve their sentence, for lack of a better term, and then no longer be banned, you know, so whether it's like a series of actions to remediate their behavior so that they're not, like, there are cases where maybe someone should be banned for life, but there are cases where someone should, like, needs to like be on probation and show that they've changed, and then, because otherwise what happens is someone did something 10 years ago and then they can never participate in a project again, and we don't want to get into that scenario, I don't think, assuming it's not like a massive, like, people change, right? And we do want people to have a way out of it. So if we come up with a process where we're like sharing all the dirt about someone between projects, we need a way for someone to have been like cleared and, you know, become accepted again, I think. But
Yeah,
it's a hard problem to solve.
I'd still go that that's well beyond what's in what we have, and there seems to be concern even with what we have. So like,
I just mean it's like if you go down that path, you end up there is kind of what I'm saying.
Right.
So it's maybe we don't go down that path.
Yeah, maybe
know.
it's not. Yeah, okay. In that context, I can see. Yeah, maybe you don't want to get there at all, but.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, Node has been through a lot of stuff and has a lot of moderation policies in place, and we've dealt with a lot of that sort of stuff. So we can certainly point folks, projects to that as some guidance. But we can work on this more perhaps next week. I think this is something we should definitely figure it out. I know we want to jump into private session, but Brian, did you want to bring something up about Node and jQuery access?
Yeah, just a general heads up. Both jQuery and Node have asked recently for me to go through and perform some audits of who has access to various different things. This is just a heads up that this is ongoing. So if you get some emails from me asking for you to verify your access or something like that, just heads up, please do respond. And that way I'll know not to clean you up.
Great.
We're using a slightly different process for each project. For jQuery, I'm reaching out to people directly. For Node, I believe the plan is that I'm pulling a list of everybody who has access and then working with the ComCom and TSC chairs to do a first round. Everybody in each of those groups to do a second round, and then reaching out directly if there's somebody else who nobody's really sure about. And that's really about it. If there are any projects that would like the same thing to happen, please let me know.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Cool. With that, we should jump into a private session for a few and then call it a day. Thanks everyone for attending and being a part of what we do. And I'll ask people who are not regular members, voting members, or foundation staff to drop off. Thank you. I will stop.